Do you guys know what delirium tremens are?
Yeah.
I just heard about them.
Do you know that alcohol is the worst thing to detox from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alcohol and benzodiazepines will kill you in detox. So for all you opiate guys like my buddy Aaron, who are always going, oh, I have a pain in my side. My knees hurt. I don't know, I haven't had a good shit in 2 years.
Sure.
Oh my God, it feels like a brick's coming out of my ass. Where did I put the Senequat? Oh my God. Right. So we had one of our members decided to sneak drink. And when he was busted, he said he had only been chipping. So we took away all his alcohol. And when you take away an alcoholic's alcohol, who's a real alcoholic and who's been drinking a lot every day, phones, David.
I know. I just got to check on someone's
Okay,
flight.
no problem. What happens is they go into delirium tremens and they start to have seizures. So, at 5 in the morning, I heard this. Boom! So I said, oh, it's my first death in the house. I figured I'll go down and check out and see what the body's like. Right? So I went downstairs and I was informed by said client that somehow, some way, the walls of his room had opened up and he had gone outside and he went away somewhere. We're not sure where, but he went. And his dad picked him up and brought him back. Unfortunately, I explained to him that his dad's in Ottawa. And unless he flew in, I don't know, was someone camouflaged as his dad. And I tried to make light of it and help the poor bastard who was completely out of his fucking mind. And then he yelled at me and said, you don't believe me? Come with me. And we went outside. And you know that tree stump I have outside? He asked me emphatically, what is she doing here? What is she doing here? Let's go outside and take a look at this hot broad. And we discovered that it's a tree. So that's what happens. So there are no bad examples in AA. Zero. Every person's experience counts. Go outside, Sean. Okay? No bad examples. You never want to ream a guy for slipping. Never. He's going to torture himself way better than you can. You don't want to tell him, when are you going to do different this time? Just, if you're ever slip and somebody asks you that, just tell the person, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Okay? I don't know what happens to alcoholics that get better, but all of a sudden they become like parents. They become like normal people. And they start lecturing us on what to do, which of course triggers our defiance and we shut down. What does it say in the contract? That the man who's making the approach has had the same difficulties. That he is a man armed with the facts about himself. That he has no attitude of holier than thou. No attitude of holier than thou. Who am I to condemn you if you slipped? You know how many slips I've had? What am I gonna fucking tell you? Right? If you lecture an alcoholic, he will not call you when he's in real trouble because he doesn't want to get lectured. That's why you go, what can I say to you, buddy? You're having a hard time, try again. You're getting closer. That's all you can say because there's no lectures to endure, no axes to grind, no people to please, just the desire to be helpful. And what is it, the promise there? The promise is that if we're like that with people, many of us will get up from our beds and walk again. And there's a lot of testimonies today to that this program works. We've got a lot of people at the table that are doing well. we have a lot of people at the table that are struggling. That's AA. Okay? There's no victories here. We're not trying to win anything. We're not trying to stick with the winners. What winners? There's not a winner at this table. Right? We're all losers. That's why we surrender. When you surrender, you admit that you've lost. So when you go to a meeting, look for the losers rather than look for the winners, because the losers need your help. How clear is that? Does it make sense?
Crystal.
Alcoholics Anonymous is different. This is not therapy. This is triage and suicide prevention. And if you don't know that, then you don't know the program. One poor chap committed suicide in my living room. He could not see our way of life. Our way of life. This is not a program. This is not a technique. This is a way of living. Get that in your head. Either you make it a way of life or you fall by the wayside. Because you'll get 4 years and you'll get 5 years, but you'll still be basically a miserable human being. Complete and utter surrender in 3. Then you do your 4 and 5. In your 6, you surrender again. 6 is telling you, stop fixing yourself. Stop trying to control outcomes. Stop begging your ex-wife for forgiveness. Okay? You can never, ever, ever fully rectify the past. The only thing you can do is through your actions is show people that you're getting better. Stop telling them. Nothing I despise more in meetings when I hear someone pontificate about how spiritual they are. I'm so spiritual now. If someone doesn't give you the compliment, it doesn't count. You got it? If you're complimenting yourself, you're in the wrong program. Go to the Anthony Robbins seminar and stand up and say how great you are. That's perfect. Go to Landmark Forum and tell them you don't buy into the racket anymore. Tell everyone how great you're doing. Perfect. But not at AA. You're an imperfectible imperfection, and that's the name of the game here. So, when we look at this problem, we're looking at a spiritual sickness. And a spiritual sickness is not something that's about internal reorganization. In other words, this is not the cognitive behavioral therapy. It is not. Now they've got 42. Every rehab center promises you 42 different models that they're going to work on you in 30 days. EMT, LMP, RSB. We do all the models here for the guy. That's impossible. It takes you 4 years to get a degree and you're going to shift the guy in 30 days? It's impossible. What you need is a vital spiritual experience, a life-giving spiritual experience. And if you had that, someday you're going to be driving in your car and you're going to start weeping because you cannot believe the change that's come over you. Your heart will be cracked open, and that's more important than the book. This program is the language of the heart. Do you get that? Do you get what kind of fucking misery that you think is happiness when you're sober? Not drinking is not happiness. You got to shelve happiness. You got to shelve all these things. You must. You must embrace the formula in this book, and then the happiness comes. Happiness is an effect. If someone says, oh, I just want to be happy, what are they claiming? They're claiming that they're unhappy. Why don't you say, I just want to help someone? I just want to do a good 4-step. I just want to make a surrender every day. It's a daily reprieve contingent upon your spiritual condition. So don't go around claiming that you're done. How many of us have had, in my case, 8 years of sobriety and I went back out? 5 years of sobriety, I went back out. 6 years, why? Why? Because I went around saying I'm done, I'm complete. If it's a daily program, you're never done. How can it be done if it's progressive, fatal, and chronic? If you got back pain and it's serious and you don't want to do meds, but your chiro and yoga are helping you, What happens if you stop your chiro and your yoga? Your chronic back pain comes back. That's what's meant by chronic. What's meant by fatal? I don't have to tell you. We've all buried people. Okay? We've all buried people because of this illness. So we don't have to belabor that point. In fact, some people that died, I wasn't happy they died, but at least I said now they get some relief. Because we're not drinking and drugging for fun anymore. It's no fun. Okay? It's no fun. Dr. Silkworth makes that very goddamn clear when he says, these men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to satisfy a craving beyond their mental control. That's what happens to you when you pick up the first drink. That's called the phenomenon of craving. But the only thing the doctor can suggest to you is entire abstinence. And you can't stay abstinent. The big book is how to avoid the first drink. How to get a defense against the first drink. And the reason why you need a defense against the first drink is very, very simple. Because if you don't get that defense, you're going to pick up, or you're going to gamble, or you're going to find something else that's going to fuck your life right up. By the way, to anybody that ever listens to this tape, when I use the word fuck, it's spelt with a PH. So don't worry about it. I'm not swearing. In fact, I had to do a behavioral contract. My poor son said the word fuck in school and he got in trouble. So we had to do this whole contract that he promises never to swear again. It's my fault that he swears. So I helped him with it. Long and the short of it is, what are you going to do with an illness that is a dilemma? And the dilemma is either you drink and you induce 1,000 consequences that you have no control over. Let's name some. Car accidents. Court cases. Money problems. Divorces. Lost, squandered years where you could have been in an occupation. Restarting your life every year. Lying, cheating, stealing, deceiving. What kind of illness is that? An illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it, an illness goes about us. What is it, Arif?
As no human sickness can.
As no other human sickness can. Sorry, I'm on hydromorphine for my cancer. So I'm a little dull. Okay? If someone has cancer, speaking of which, all are sorry for him. No one is angry or hurt. When I was in the hospital, I had 100 visitors because they feel sorry for me, and rightly so. I have lots of friends. They came, they visited me, they encouraged me, they supported me. But not so with alcoholism. Nobody visits you in detox. Not so with alcoholism, for with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. Everything goes. What does that mean? Simply, I give up my own self-preservation for an alteration in mood. I give up my son. I give up my mother. I give up my ex-wife, which I have a closer relationship with now than I ever had before. I give up my power, my property, my prestige. I give up how I appear, my reputation. I sacrifice everything, every iota of self-preservation. For what? For a change in mood. Think of that. If that's not a spiritual illness, I don't know what it is. But it's fucking not a cognitive behavioral problem. Because if I could change my thinking, I would have a long time ago. I can't. Where does it tell me that? It tells me clearly in the book that my problem centers in my mind, not my body. Everybody interprets that as, well, I got to change my thinking. I have a thinking problem. You do not. You have a spiritual sickness, a soul sickness, which makes you self-destructive, which makes you stabilize on masochistic self-destruction. That's what you do. Please don't tell me that you're getting something, especially this table. Right? There's nobody here that's using to go have fun. Disco ended in 84. You're not going to the disco anymore. You're not doing your 2 lines of the good Peruvian flake at 12:34 in Montreal and going dancing to the laser lights and that stupid dance floor that made you spin. Right? No doubt. Listening to Casey and the Sunshine Band while you were dancing and meeting your future ex-wife at the disco was the greatest thing that ever happened to you. And I agree, but it's over. Right? So what's the problem? The problem is not that I have the phenomenon of craving, because if I'm trying to treat the phenomenon of craving, I'm trying to become a social drinker. I'm trying to beat the game. That's the problem. People say, well, I really got a drinking problem. I drink too much. No, you don't drink enough. That's way different than drinking too much. The type 2 drinks too much. But the alcoholic never drinks enough. That's a problem, right? We won't even get into the coconut stuck in a trap house, puffing on his stem with 700 missed calls on his phone, going, how am I ever going to explain this one? It's horrific. But that's what happens to us. Can you imagine that that's not your problem? That's not your problem. Your problem is when you finally decide to get sober, you're restless, irritable, and discontented. The problem is sobriety, being sober. That's the problem. How am I going to live sober if my life is so unmanageable? So step 1 is the dilemma. Either you're going to drink and incur all kinds of consequences, or you're going to be sober and abjectly miserable. Completely and utterly miserable. In misery. That's what sobriety is. That's why when they call meds at rehab, you have 40 people in the institution sprinting to the nurse's station, hoping against hope that diazepam has a long-term effect. It does not. But they want it quiet in the rehabs, especially when they're doing those tours with the parents. Everyone's cranked out on Suboxone and diazepam and methadone and whatever. And the parents are going, wow, look how calm everybody is. Isn't that nice? Right? And the place looks like an all-inclusive. The reason why I'm wearing a construction hat today is because of page 83. It says there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. And the lead that you have to take is treating your unmanageability. You must treat the unmanageability. And to couple that with the real disaster is the mental blank spot on page 22. Why does he do that? If 100 experiences have shown that picking up the first drink or drug will result in an unbelievable debacle, why does he do it? And then he surrenders. Bill surrenders. He says, we do not have an answer to that question. We can describe it, but we can't analyze it. AA is a description of the alcoholic. It's not an analysis of the alcoholic. If you start analyzing your problems, you'll become crazier than you are today. We describe it in the first 43 pages of the book. And then at the end of that 43 pages, at the end, it says very clearly, the alcoholic cannot muster a defense against the first drink. Okay? He cannot muster a defense against the first drink. The big book subtitle should be Alcoholics Anonymous, and there should be a subtitle, How to Avoid the First Drink. How to surrender your need to change your mood. And that's the problem right there. Your problem is sobriety. And because your problem is sobriety, we here make the conclusion that alcoholism begins when you're sober. Because as long as you're out of your mind on drugs and alcohol, you couldn't give a shit. Vladimir Putin could call, if I had a bag of Coke here and a bottle of booze, Vladimir Putin could call me and say, in 20 minutes, you're going to have a hypersonic missile hit your house. And I would say, thanks, Vlad. Hang up the phone, do a line, and say, he's lying. I don't give a shit. I don't care about anything. Which brings us to the mental blank spot. What are the names that are used for the mental blank spot? It's called in the 12 and 12 an insane urge. You can only have an urge if you're deprived of something. The second thing it's called is the mental blank spot. Then it's called the strange mental twist. And we can't answer the question why we have that. But we know that there's a cycle of use. We get restless, irritable, discontent. We start to feel our skin crawl. We start to become injustice collectors. And we're going, does that person always dress in that same shirt at the meetings all the time? Oh my God, she's sharing again? Could she talk longer about nothing? And we start to get more and more aggravated. And then the screw in our gut starts to tighten and tighten. And then we get home. And we look at the most important people in our lives and we go, oh, them again. Ugh. We feel like existence is futile. We feel confused about life. We feel hard done by and self-pity. And that coil gets so tight that we need relief from it. And we always, if we don't have this program down and we don't know the formula, we always go back to the first drink or drug. That's what alcoholism is. If all the self-help books that have been written in the last 40 years since I came into this program would have done anything, we'd have been okay. So many. The Messiah Complex, The Drama of the Gifted Child, Toxic Parents, The Road Less Traveled. All of these books, Alan Watts, whoever it is, if those things would work, we'd get sober. We'd read a self-help book and we'd be good. We read a self-help book and we go, I think I'm a social drinker. My problem's I'm the Messiah Complex. My problem is I have trauma. You listen to Gabor Mate for half an hour and he's going to convince you that all your problems are outside of yourself. You've been deprived of the opportunity to be your authentic self by some type of injustice that occurred to you in your childhood, in a war, whatever it is. And it's that deprivation that makes your soul sickness kick in and you want to shoot cocaine for 4 days until there's blood all over your bathroom. If that was the case, you heal your trauma, you heal your alcoholism. So if you're an alcoholic and you feel like you've healed your trauma and your alcoholism's gone, what do? Drink. That's not good. Right? Or if you're a cocaine addict, strictly a cocaine addict, you're Jewish, your family scared the shit out of you about alcohol, you picked up cocaine at the discos, and 30 years later you're still very skinny. Everyone says to you, how come you look so good at 50? And you go, well, you know what I mean? I just, follow a keto diet from Colombia. Right? Or if you're an Italian, the Italians like the opioids because they've got these very loving mothers that smother them. So the opioids function as their new mother, just a warm blanket. I think the Macedonians are also Italian, right? Whatever it may be, whatever your problem is, what happens if someone came up to you and said, we're going to deal with your powerlessness. We're going to deal with your unmanageability. And when you're going to deal with that mental blank spot and the strange insanity of the first string, so easily, on page 64, you don't have to open your books. Page 64, it says, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out physically and mentally. How do you straighten out spiritually? How? AA has a very novel idea. We know that information can breed knowledge. We know that. We need knowledge. We like knowledge. Page 50, logic is great stuff. We venerate the thinking mind of the human being, but it can't get us to the shore of faith. We need faith. The reason why we need faith is because if the future is infinite, then fear is infinite. Faith makes you optimistic about the future. And if you're optimistic about the future, you're not going to be terrified. You're not going to live in self-reliance. You're not going to live in that isolation of the alcoholic, thinking that you can deal with your problems on your own. How horrible is that? Before we settle down to start the meeting, everybody's in the room. There's an electric feeling in the room. Everyone's happy to see each other. There's hope here. Because this room right now is a power greater than you. That's the first part of your spiritual awakening. And do you know why? Because AA eliminates difference. Every single one of us at this table has a common illness. Every single one of us. There's not one of us here that's different. The minute you start to use the word issues, you separate yourself. What you're saying is that your issues are different than my issues. Let's start a gay group or a woman's group or a gardening group or whatever it is. We're not different. Man, woman. Doesn't make a difference. There's no difference. We all have a common problem. Every single one of us has a common problem. Why is that great to find out? Because it's an illness, a malady, an affliction. It doesn't use the word disease in the book. Not much. A couple of times in the stories. It's an illness. It's a spiritual illness. It's a spiritual malady. It's a spiritual sickness. Why do you think he uses the words human sickness when he's describing the illness? Mammals don't commit suicide. Human beings do. Because we just have a warped way of seeing the world. And it's not your fault. Because you didn't know that AA existed. We all came home and said we'll never do it again. We think our willpower is of no use whatever. We think we're of no use forever. We're beaten, smashed, damaged by our own hand. We do it to ourselves. If you're a Holocaust survivor, you don't have that problem. Yes, you were beaten, damaged, smashed, and almost killed. but it was by the hands of somebody else. We do it to ourselves. That's an affliction. You take the hand that's killing you from the deep pit that you're in, and you raise up your hand and you say to someone, please help me out of the pit. I must be out of this pit. Please help me. I will go to any lengths for victory over this. Please help me. Do you know how hard it is for an alcoholic to ask for help with his record of failure? That's why it's important that the sponsor inspire his sponsee rather than always cajole him and aggravate him about what he's doing wrong. Did you do your nightly inventory? Did you write down 47 resentments every night of the week for the rest of your life so you'll build a shrine to what's wrong with you and you'll become an AA neurotic and you'll run around the room saying how many character defects you have? I have 72 character defects. We don't care because we can't fix ourselves. We've never demonstrated the ability to fix ourselves. Once that's clear, you're golden. Once you understand you're not here to fix yourself, you're here to surrender your craziness in 3 and your character defects in 6. It's all surrender. You make room inside of yourself. You unblock so that the grace of God can come into your heart and expel the obsession. So you always have that pilot light inside of you. All you have to do is remove the blocks that are in you in 4. 40, 50 minutes is a step 5. If it's longer than that, then you don't get the gist of what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to build a list of all the things you think. You're as sick as your secrets. Where does it say that in the book? It just asks us to be rigorous